Let's see if we can get the jazz hands going here. Come on, jazz hands. All right, there he goes. Larry Zanoff doing jazz hands. All right. And there goes Walter Keller doing jazz hands. We are live. We are live. I hope you got your big girl Hollywood panties on tonight. This is episode 304 of the Who Moved My Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Hank Strange. Here I am. We're coming back for this one-time special show. Here's your other host right there. Look at him, Walter Keller. He looks kind of like a zombie.
Call an airstrike, please.
Don't hold it against him. Don't hold it against him.
Yeah, I'm in a cave someplace.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. It's called New Orleans. No, I'm not going to get that started.
Say what you want.
Yeah. And here's our special guest coming to us from Hollywood, California. Can I say that, Larry?
Yeah, actually, I'm in Bakersfield right now, which is where I live. I just work in Hollywood.
Okay, there you go. Okay, he's representing Hollywood. Larry Zanoff. There he goes. The man, the myth, the legend from Independent Studio Services, ISS, and of course, Hollywood Weapons.
Hollywood Weapons.
Yes. What is it? Hollywood. The full title is Hollywood Weapons: Fact or Fiction, right?
That is the full title. Yeah.
Yes.
We try to prove all the facts and disprove all the fiction. But
all right, very cool, very cool. Going into its third season
airing Saturday, January 5th, in fact, and then it'll run through the new 8 episodes that we've filmed throughout this last couple of months, and then we'll be into season 4 later in the year in 2019. Really exciting.
Awesome. On the Outdoor Channel for anyone.
On the Outdoor Channel, and now it's available on Netflix as well as on Amazon Prime.
That's where we watched it. One of those two we saw it on.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been watching it on Netflix. I didn't know you're also on Amazon Prime. That's awesome.
It's a fairly recent thing. Yeah, we're real happy about that. I think both Netflix for sure, and then the Amazon Prime as well has really improved our circulation. Most people don't get Outdoor Channel.
Right,
you got to pay extra for it. So
you got to pay extra for it, yeah. But if people write in and we see a little bit more response, mainly from the Netflix and the Amazon Prime, that helps networks get lower numbers on your cable box. So then the standard boxes will come with Outdoor Channel, and that'll improve circulation for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. There you go. If you don't know, if you've never heard of Larry Zanoff, go Google him. There's going to be lots of stuff coming up, but he's here. He's going to be with us for the whole 2 hours. We're waiting for everyone to get in right now. I want to say what's up to everyone that's out there in the chat. We're right now on hiatus. So that means we're coming back to do this special show. Then we're going to go back on hiatus. I think Lola said we're not coming back until January 7th ourselves. To do the show. Yeah. And then we'll be, of course, doing shows all the way up to SHOT Show. So we're going to be doing that. I want to encourage everyone that's watching us now to click the thumbs ups button because we need that. Okay. Hit those thumbs ups. Also, make sure you share this so we can get the word out for those folks who don't realize that we're coming back on for this. Of course, leave your questions in here. We're going to kind of skip over the usual shout outs to anyone, unless you just need a super special shout out, but you can leave your questions for Larry in here. So that's the way to go with that. And then I want to encourage everyone once again, Outdoor Channel, you can get Hollywood Weapons there. You can also go to Netflix and you can go to Amazon Prime.
And we now even have ball caps and T-shirts for Hollywood Weapons. You can call into ISS to the Expendables store and pick those up there as well.
Okay,
so that's pretty cool.
Is that on the website?
The Expendables store is. I don't know that they're advertising the hats and shirts yet.
Okay, because I went on there.
Fairly recent thing.
I went on the Expendables part of it, and I didn't see that, but I didn't go deep in it. So
if you call up or email Expendables and ask for it, they have it on the shelf right now.
Okay. Oh, very cool, very cool. And then let's see. I think you're going to be at SHOT Show, right, Larry?
I am going to be at SHOT Show. I'll be there starting Sunday. A bunch of different VIP range events that I need to go attend, and then I'll be at the show all 4 days, Tuesday through Friday. Yeah.
Okay, so we're even
having a live talk kind of like this one at the Brownells booth Wednesday at 9 a.m. I believe. So you're welcome to come down and listen to it, live as it were, and I love talking to fans and everything after those events. You feel free to come down and shake a hand. If you want something autographed, we can do that too.
Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. So any industry people that are going to SHOT Show, you want to meet up with Larry, that's the place to do it. Brownells booth. I want to give a special shout out to them because I am, as you can see, a member of the Bureau of Propaganda of Brownells.
There you go.
So shout out to those guys.
That's how we met, in fact, right?
Yes, absolutely.
We helped out with the Brownells tour across America that they were doing, or what was it called? Yes. Convoy across America. That's what it was. Right. And I think they were kind enough. They actually selected ISS as the last point in the visit, you know, which was pretty cool. And I could tell too, Hank, you know, but that whole group, they were kind of tired out by the time they made it to ISS. And I think everybody walked in kind of going like, oh God, is this another place we got to drag through? But by the time they were done, I think they were pretty excited because it's a very, very unique place.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Lola just asked me if you can tilt the camera down a little bit. I don't know whether you can or you cannot.
Like,
because probably it's yeah.
Like that way?
That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Let's see.
I just thought of something. If I don't have a hat on, then I get more light in here off my head.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So if you can, Larry, if not, it's fine.
I want to make sure. Yeah. I don't know how much better that is.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's good. Okay. Hopefully Lola will be able to live with it. So if anyone out there doesn't know, the whole convoy across America with Brownells kind of started on this show, actually, Larry. You probably
really?
I don't know if you know that. Yeah, it was kind of born here on the show because I always wanted to do a cannonball run kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so Brownells was nice enough to get involved with that and help organize. So we basically came up with the idea. Brownells did all the work.
Yeah. Also, my son came up with like a tour to the Brownells, that kind of idea. But
yeah, we're going to probably do it in further years because I think they had a good time. So we'll do different things. But so that's where that whole thing came from. So Josh, Ryan, and some other folks over at Brownells really helped out with that and did everything. And yeah, at the end, so we started off in Florida and we drove all the way out to California. You were kind of like the last stop. Everyone was pretty beat up, I think, by the time we got out there.
Yeah.
But I think that it was, and I'm not just saying this, it was the best stop because I'm a huge movie fan.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. So eventually, I know you saw us all tired and beat down. And
yeah, he's always quizzing me on movies, and it's like, okay, come on. I didn't see this obscure, goofy movie like Nazis on the moon and stuff. I didn't see that movie, so it's like
my favorite movie.
Yeah, here you go, another one.
Yeah. Iron Sky. Shout out to Iron Sky out there. But Larry, if it doesn't have tanks in it, Walter probably is not very interested.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, there's more than enough movies that have tanks in it.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm sure we can keep it. So Walter, what's your favorite movie with the tank in it?
Oh dear, God, you have to ask me that stuff. Let's see here. Oh hell.
Well, what did you just go see? Didn't you just go see the footage from World War I that was
recolored? The World War I movie that's been recolorized and everything. But that's got tanks. Yeah, it does have tanks. Yeah, the first tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Was that They Shall Not Grow Old?
Yes.
Yeah. That was a very interesting project, actually.
Yeah. That was a lot of because they did a really good job. If you get a chance to see it, check it out.
Yeah.
Cool.
I haven't had a chance to see it. Walter's seen it.
Color makes it. You see these black and white movies, and you go black and white, you just don't see it. But when it goes color, and you see the blood, and you see the different shades of the uniforms and stuff, it puts it all in perspective.
Changes it, yeah.
So people are trying to chime in out there, Larry, just so you know. Okay. Someone's saying Fury, someone's saying Tank was good, someone's saying Black Hawk Down.
Yeah, Fury, that's a good. I mean, the tank work in that was pretty good. The movie was a little weird, I thought. The storyline and just some of the scenes in the movie, like the German family that they eat dinner with and that one has sex with, and then the apartment gets blown up. I left that going, what the heck was that about? But anyways, so.
I think that was probably to keep the movie interesting for people who were not
Army
military type people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're paying for a movie ticket, so the whole crowd has to get satisfied with it, you know.
Yeah. No, but the whole the weapons and stuff like that was good in that movie. I like that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie The Beast?
The Beast.
It was about it was they may have released it here under the term the Tank.
Oh, that was about the German and Russian crew that are chasing each other?
No, it was about
or a
Russian tank crew in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
There was a T-62 tank. That was actually a very good one, too, as far as the equipment and showing the capabilities of the tank and everything. If you're into armor, that's a really good movie.
Okay, cool. Someone's saying Kelly's Heroes. There's a whole bunch of them.
Oh, for sure.
I think Inglourious Bastards had some tank stuff in it, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Let's see.
Well, Saving
Private Ryan was good. Kelly's Heroes was entertaining.
Right.
I don't know how historically accurate it might have been.
I always loved the old movies where they have a Sherman with a Iron Cross on it. You know, that's what I always, where they don't have any German tanks, so they dress up the American tanks. Like Patton, the movie Patton, I think they had the same way.
Oh, I think the worst offender was probably the Rat Patrol, where you had Sherman tanks and American half-tracks all painted up as German vehicles. But, I think that's kind of what happens to the side that loses the war. A lot of their equipment doesn't always, remain available and in running condition.
Right. Well, and in reality, the Germans did use a lot of captured equipment. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Not only tanks, but aircraft and small arms.
That's what you don't see that in propaganda newsreels, but in reality, they use thousands of captured weapons. So
yeah. And I'm just gonna say this: my favorite movie with a tank in it is Tank Girl. So there you go.
Was there boobs in that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
I had to get that qualification out of
that. Is absolutely positive. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about, Walter. I don't know. Do you, Larry?
I have felt a shift in the force just now. The conversation was kind of going in one direction, and now everything. That was interesting.
Tank Girl is a movie. It's legitimate.
You know what? Tank Girl was actually a very popular movie, and I believe it was based on a Japanese. Anime type cartoon, which was hugely popular. And the movie, while it wasn't, considered Academy Award winning material, it truly has a big cult following.
Yes.
I
like horrible. I like horrible 80s movies. Just FYI.
The 80s had a lot of them,
Yes. Now, so we're gonna talk to Larry about. We'll probably start with how you started doing what you're doing. Have you explain some of that to the folks out there if there's people who don't know? But you weren't making movies in the 80s, I'm gonna assume.
No, I was not making movies in the 80s. My intro into the entertainment industry. I usually describe it as being in the wrong place at the wrong time and having a misspent youth. That's kind of how I fell into it. The 80s, I was actually living overseas. I grew up most of my life overseas. And I was in the Israeli military during the 80s fighting a war in Lebanon.
Well, I mean, that part of it
wasn't awesome. It really, awesome would not have been the way I would have
Were you employed by the IDF when they liberated all the Palestinian weapons?
I was. The stuff that we pulled out of they literally had tunnels and caverns under Beirut. The stuff that was pulled out of there was unbelievable, just as far as the quantity of it, but as far as the various range of things that we found there too. I mean, we found everything from helicopters and trucks that were being stored underground to crates of unused, brand new STG 44s still in the packing grease. It was unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, it was very, very interesting. If you're into small arms and everything, it was quite the interesting kind of event, just because of all the history in that part of the world anyway, and then seeing all those weapons all in one place, it was just kind of amazing.
And then the Israelis sold all that stuff to like Century Arms, and Century Arms started importing all that stuff. And
I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that I might incriminate myself.
I bought some of that stuff that was captured there, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is cool stuff."
Some of that stuff might have trickled through Larry's fingertips, maybe.
That's all right.
Is this microphone working? I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that I might incriminate myself.
So let's do this. So where did a young Larry Zanoff start out? I think when I was looking at your bio, you are an American citizen. I think maybe are you a dual citizenship?
I have dual citizenship. Yes.
Okay.
I was born in Philadelphia, and my father, may he rest in peace, was a mechanical engineer that always worked with defense contracting companies, doing some very technical stuff. So when I was about 4.5, 5 years old, we moved with my father to Israel because he was hired by the Israeli Ministry of Defense to do some very technical work. So I basically grew up there, kindergarten, first grade, all the way through elementary and high school. Got dual citizenship because if you're Jewish and you live in Israel for more than 3 consecutive years, you automatically get Israeli citizenship bestowed upon you.
And then you automatically get a chance to be in the Army then, right?
You have to go fight.
Yeah, there's always that. There's always pluses and minuses. I did at 18, when you graduate from high school, you have to go into the military mandatory. You can defer it. There's certain educational programs where if you're going into specific fields, you can go to college first and then go into the military. But the majority of teenagers, upon graduation from high school, both male and female, all go into the military.
Okay. Is that 18? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So went through the military. Usually it's 3 years mandatory service for males and 2 years for females. That's changed a little bit now, but that's what it was back in the 80s. I did a little bit more than that because of the unit I was in, and because when there's a war going on, those rules kind of go out the window, so they kind of keep you a little longer sometimes, depending upon what you're doing. Then when I finally did get released, my parents had moved back to the States years before, so I finished my military service there and then came back to visit them. With the intention of going back, actually. I wanted to learn how to be a gunsmith, go to college for that. So I started kind of working towards that. In the meantime, met the love of my life, got married and all the things that happen in life. So I kind of stayed here. Worked for a machine gun factory here in California, Calico Light Weapon Systems. We made all kinds of different high cap magazine firearms. Right up to the point that the company basically went out of business due to the 94 high capacity magazine ban in California. Our big selling point was the high capacity magazine. Without that, the gun really wasn't worth very much. And so oddly enough, they talk about one door closing and one door opening. Someone who had gone to college with me was already working in the industry, in the entertainment industry, and they needed another qualified gunsmith, but not just someone who could engrave metal and make a stock, someone who was also familiar with military firearms. Because let's face it, when you're watching a movie, that's the stuff that gets people excited. And that individual called up to the college and said, "Hey, who do you got who's good with, military weapons and stuff like that?" And he, got my phone number, and they said, "This is the guy that you want to call." And it's pretty much been downhill since then.
it's been. I think it's a good thing, right?
It is a good thing. It's actually a wonderful industry. For me personally, I've worked in law enforcement. I've worked in the military world, private security as well. And to be able to use kind of I'm 50, I'll be 54 in January. So to be able to utilize 54 years of knowledge of weaponry and things like that in something that brings other people joy and pleasure, going to the movies is always something fun that people like to do. That really just is very satisfying to be able to go to a movie and, watch people laugh and clap and throw popcorn at the screen and know that, hey, I had a tiny little part in doing that. Not a big one, but hey, I was the guy on set that was running, that that minigun on the rubber boat out on the water, or, you know, the gun in the helicopter somewhere, or even just, you know, instructing the actors and supporting the production from behind the scenes. It's very, it's creative. It's very hands-on, and it's very satisfying.
Okay, very cool. So if we check IMDb, we will see, I checked it. Larry Zanoff is there, and you're on a whole bunch of movies, right?
Movies, television shows, commercials, live performances, anything in the entertainment realm, we basically handle, because we are at our core, we're a prop house, which provides not just weapons. I happen to work in the weapons department, but as you saw when you did the tour, Hank, the prop house is just huge, and you have everything from, you know, the Lost Ark from, you know, a Raiders movie, to cell phones, to sunglasses, to, you know, rubber guns for
there's lawnmowers in there, there's ladders,
sporting
there's just
goods,
regular tools.
Think of anything you've ever seen in a television show or a movie. It's got to come from somewhere, and we hope that it comes from us.
Okay, very cool. And so you've been working with, that's ISS, right? Independent Studio
Services, yes. Not to be confused with ISS, the International Space Station, which happens when you do the Google search. So look up Independent Studio Services, and you'll see what we have to offer.
Yes, absolutely. And you've been doing that for how long? Like, when did you?
Gosh, I've been doing this probably since about '98. In the film industry, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So
cool.
about 20 years.
Okay, and then and what's your classification over there? Your armorer?
Well, I mean, we call it motion picture armorer, which is a little bit deceiving, because most people think of an armorer as a guy who's sitting at a bench with a hammer, kind of like a gunsmith kind of guy. In the film industry, there's a little bit of a different definition. An armorer is the person who's responsible for weapons on the set. And when I say responsible for weapons, that really means everything. So I'm responsible for the safety aspects. I'm responsible sometimes for the training of the actors, setting up the different camera angles, because, you know, you consult with the director. You know, our job as prop people, because even though we're armorers, we're still considered prop people. Our job is to take the director's vision and make it come to life up on screen. And so you talk to all the different departments, and you interact with them with wardrobe. You know, how does this holster fit into the wardrobe? Is it going to mess up the hang of the clothes? Special effects. You know, we do one side of a gun battle, which is the gunfire, but the other side is the special effects department. So even just technical things like, I'm shooting a handgun and the effects department is rigging the bullet hits, compared to I'm shooting a minigun, shooting at 3,000 rounds a minute and having to cue the bullet hits so that it looks correct. You know, those are all things that the on-set armorer does.
Okay, very cool. I'm going to try to get to some questions here. Let me see.
Sure.
And then, you know, like I said before, we started all this, you know, Larry's really here to talk about what he does, and guns in movies and things like that. You know, of course, Larry's in Hollywood, so we're not trying to do anything to make it more difficult for him than it already is to be in Hollywood. You're a Second Amendment guy, right? You're a gun guy.
Definitely a gun guy. I've been a gun guy my entire life, for sure.
Yes.
I mean, I can literally remember being like 6 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with my father, helping him disassemble his, you know, firearms and clean them and maintain them. So definitely guns are in the blood.
Yeah. We don't want to do anything, though, to make it more difficult for you. Walter, did you want to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. Someone was asking, okay, I'm going to ask this question, but you can tell us, Larry, if you don't want to answer anything.
Okay.
Someone wanted to know if the IDF women are as hot as Instagram shows them to be.
In fact, they are not. Instagram does not do them justice. They are actually hotter than what you see on Instagram. Israel is a very, very beautiful country. And not to use a cliche, but the people are also very beautiful. It comes from mixing of the genetic backgrounds. There's so many immigrants that come, and live in Israel, whether from the former Soviet Union or from the United States or from, Asia or even Africa. And so that intermingling, that boiler pot kind of effect is what gives rise to the beauty both of the landscape and of the people. Okay,
very cool. I'm guessing this is why you didn't really want to leave. You were planning.
I really enjoyed living in Israel, and it to me, even though at this point I have just recently, spent more years in the United States now than I did in Israel. But Israel to me is still home when I think of it. There's so much history. The people are so warm and open, and that's one of the things I think people really miss out on. If you've never been to Israel, all you see is like bad things on CNN. And that's not what the country's like. It's a normal country. People go to the movies and go out on Friday nights and, spend time at the beach, and they live a normal life. There are bad things that happen, but there are bad things that happen everywhere. So you shouldn't think about only what you see on television as a guide. You should, take the opportunity to go there and see the country for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's that kind of goes for anywhere. I don't want to say everywhere.
It's not everywhere.
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily say
it's
everywhere.
Not everywhere.
But here's the thing: like I lived in Nigeria when I was a kid.
There you go.
I grew up. I think I came to America when I was 11. So I grew up outside of America until that time. And Nigeria is when you look at it in the news and all that kind of stuff, it's violent and there's a lot of terrible things. And if you talk to like my older brother, he'll tell you it was completely horrible. But if you live somewhere when you're a kid and you live somewhere, everything's not horrible. There's still these romantic ideas of things you have in your mind that, hey, there was cool stuff. You're living there as a human being. The people that have to live around the world, they're still human beings and they go about their life, except for those terrible things that could happen based on the government and the people that live there.
For sure. And I mean, let's be honest, you could walk out onto the streets of LA or any metropolitan city in the States, New York or whatever, and you could get hit by a bus. Right. And
you go one block over too far in the French Quarter and you might end up having issues. So
there you go. And by the way, Walter, where did you say you were right now?
New Orleans. Yeah.
How far away from the French Quarter?
Oh, I'm actually in a straight line, probably in a straight line 5 miles, maybe.
There you go. So you're still safe, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah. This neighborhood is cool here. It's a normal middle-class neighborhood. Yeah.
Though, the thing that you were talking about, though, Hank, is so very true. And people in the United States that don't travel very much, and traveling is not going from Louisiana to Florida. Traveling is leaving the country, If you haven't been to other countries in Africa and Europe and Asia, you can't really, you can see the beauty when you go there, but then you also appreciate what we have here in the United States when you come back. And if you haven't seen the comparison, it's very hard to appreciate and understand the world as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think so. Almost everyone in America needs to leave. I'm not telling people to go anywhere, but you probably should, just so that you can appreciate a little bit more what it is to be an American. Lots of guys who served in the military that leave and go to other places, they get that benefit. They pay for it, though, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Well,
they do fine work. They dedicate their lives to protecting this country. If they get to travel as a result of that, okay. But the travel is not why they're there. It's not why they're doing this, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Ultimate respect to anyone who puts on a uniform, be it in the military or EMS services, public safety, whatever it may be. Putting on a uniform, definitely means you're dedicating your life to something beyond, just the average kind of workaday profession.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things in my experience from going to other countries that separates America. I'm not going to say all, but most of the people in America that put on a uniform, police officers to people serving in the military, firefighters, all that kind of stuff, they take that incredibly seriously, which people don't necessarily take it so seriously in other places of the world. Some people do. That's how you keep law and order. And that's always a reflection of how good it really is to live in that country, right?
I think so. I mean, You can read foreign press, which actually I encourage anyone to do. Don't only get, the US sources. Get online and look out, seek out foreign press articles. But you can see that by and large, there's other countries, certain parts of the world that the law enforcement, let's say, is corrupt. Government is corrupt. And it's just kind of an accepted thing that's the way it is. When here in the United States, you're taught the policeman, the fireman, whoever that guy is in uniform with a badge, he's there to help you. He's there to protect you. Little kids, if you're lost, what are you supposed to do? Find a policeman. He's going to help you. And I think that's a fundamental difference that we have here in the United States compared to not every country in the world, but to many countries in the world. Things are different here, and people should really appreciate that difference.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to try to take some questions. I see a lot of questions of people wanting to know if you worked on John Wick. Can you?
So I did not work on John Wick. John Wick was mainly filmed in New York, and the legislation, the rules and regulations throughout the country of what constitutes a blank gun and what blank guns are able to be used on the streets and everything are a little bit different. Even though we have cool guns and stuff like that, we still have to abide by all the laws and rules and regulations of every Joe Public that's out there. And so we have to abide by New York's laws, a little bit different than California's laws. And so there's another armory in New York, and they do most of the gun stuff in New York.
Okay, because they have to be specifically licensed in New York to have those things.
That is correct.
A little bit of politics probably involved with that too.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're Teamsters. There's some kind of.
I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that I might incriminate myself.
I used to be a Teamster a long time ago, so I kind of.
There you go.
Yeah, one of the foreign countries I've lived in is actually New York City. So when I came here in the 80s, I grew up in New York City, so I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Beautiful city, but like every other place here in the United States, every place has their own flavor and their own, kind of feel and vibe to it and everything. And works for some people, doesn't work for other people, but that's why we have such a big country.
Yep.
Yeah. And New York City was big for movies for a long time. I think they still have like an actual police unit that is dedicated to TV shows and film crews and all that. Because I had a friend that his son worked in that unit.
Yeah, so, most people maybe don't realize this because, the image of movie making is Hollywood, and Hollywood's in California. But the film industry in the United States actually began at the beginning of the 20th century in New York. That's where it began. Due to different restrictions and some union policy and stuff like that, the industry drifted westward to Hollywood and kind of took root here for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was geography.
Weather.
Because what's that?
Weather,
exactly. Yeah, geography and weather. You could be at the beach, and by the end of the day, you could be in the mountains. You could film in the desert. You could film in the snow. And so for many production reasons, California was a little bit better. But New York has always maintained a very strong film industry, both television and movies. All of the stage plays and things like that. We always think of, New York. That's where a lot of the entertainment industry is based in this country. And so Hollywood and New York are actually kind of like bookends, East and West Coast. And of course, Atlanta is picking up on that. Atlanta, Georgia is doing the same thing now. Lots of production being done there, as well as in New Orleans.
Louisiana's a big,
Yeah,
mainly because of tax incentives.
Yeah, you have to have a cooperative political environment for it to make it work. If you have one that's anti this or anti that or overtaxed, it don't work.
Yeah. The thing to remember too about the entertainment industry, you have this image of a couple people on set. You got the actors, you got a guy with a camera and a director with a bullhorn, but the industry itself brings in so much income to Southern California, to Atlanta, to New York, and it goes beyond just the movie set. You think about it: dry cleaners, hotels, restaurants, limousine services, all those different elements of a society, they all feed off of the entertainment industry. And so it's a very, very successful industry to have in your area. It has a lot of pull. Of course, we love the glitz and the glamour of Hollywood. So there's a lot of tax incentives out there to draw production into different areas, which I think is a good thing, because, you know, if you put all your eggs in one basket, you know, you're taking a risk.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. So my understanding is we've got Hollywood, we've got New York, and then we've got Atlanta, and I know Minnie's over there making some trouble for you,
missing
right,
her owner, that's what it is.
Yeah. And we've got New Orleans and Atlanta. Is there anywhere else that...
New Mexico is actually a very good filming venue. Again, because of the geography, a lot of Westerns are done out there. We've done a lot of stuff in Florida in the past. Okay. But I would say that Hollywood, New York, Atlanta, Louisiana, and New Mexico within the United States are probably the big locales. And again, a lot of it's driven by location, by the geography itself. You're not going to do, you know, a Hawaiian jungle type movie in New Mexico. Even though nowadays with CGI and with green screen and stuff like that, all you really need is a studio somewhere, and you could achieve about 70 to 80% of everything you needed. But there's a certain part of that realism that, you know, if you're going to be in the jungle in the movie, you have to go and film in a jungle. Yeah. And so that's some stuff that modern technology has not been able to duplicate yet.
Yeah, I think we could still tell the difference. You know,
for sure. You know, like for me as a gun guy, when I watch a movie, even if it's a movie that I didn't work on, I'll be watching it shot by shot and thinking to myself, how did they do that? How did they film that? Where was the camera angle on that? And when I look at it and you go, oh, they didn't have to worry about the camera angle because it wasn't a real gun. It was, you know, flashes that were put in by CGI, computer generated images. I can pick that out. I know guys that are good like that way with cars. You know, they can hear the sound of an engine 3 blocks away and know that it was the 67 overhead, you know, 571, whatever it was. Right. That's the way I look at it when I'm dealing with guns, and specifically guns in the film industry. So yeah, technology, you need that realism. Thank goodness that's why we're still in business. When an actor needs a gun in their hand, they need to feel the recoil. They need to see the flash. They need to, you know, feel the weight of the firearm. If you don't have that, it really does come across, you know, in the on-screen kind of appearance. And I've always kind of, you know, made the analogy that if the prop department does their job correctly, it's kind of like a security program running in the background of a computer. You never really notice it, but it's there doing its job. So you buy into the movie. The guns are right. The cars are right. The wardrobe is right. You disappear into, let's say, a 1930s gangster movie for 2 hours. But if you have one gun that's out of place, or you have one car that didn't exist in that time period, it pulls you out. It kind of busts the bubble of that television show or movie, and that's what ruins things for people. Because I'll tell you honestly, the amount of effort that goes into a bad movie is exactly the same amount of effort that goes into a good movie. It's 16 weeks out on set, long hours. So the thing that makes one work and one not work are the tiny little details, the props, the good writing, the dialogue, the actors, of course, and the crew. You only see the actor in front of the camera, but there's like 100 people behind the camera that are supporting, from wardrobe to hairdo and makeup to the gaffers to electrical. Without all those elements gelling correctly, you're not going to get a good movie.
Yeah. And I think this is just my opinion, you know, the final element of a movie is the audience. And that audience has to suspend their disbelief, right? To really sink into this world and believe that it's real.
You do. I don't know how much it's a true suspense of disbelief as much as it's a desire to buy into the story. You know what I mean? I don't think people, they don't want to wait in line to see a movie going, I know it's not going to be real, but I want to see it anyway. They want to go in and go, I wonder what it was like living in Chicago in the 1920s. I hope this movie shows me what it was like. And if a film is done correctly, and at Independent Studio Services, as far as props go, we take this very seriously, especially when you're doing a historical piece. We feel very responsible for the visual of that historical piece, because again, if you put something in incorrect, like, hey, that watch didn't exist in the 1920s or something like that, a lot of people learn their history from movies nowadays. And so we're helping educate people to certain things. So you really want to go that extra mile to make sure that what you're putting out there is correct, because you get a credit. People think it's cool to get a credit on a movie, but there's a responsibility there. If you did something wrong, if something in the movie was bad, people are going to look up that credit and go, oh, what does Larry Zanoff know? He didn't know anything. He's got the wrong gun in that movie.
So you're saying, like, if in a movie there's a Glock and it has a hammer on it,
how horrible
that might throw someone off.
And so, a great example, that is a great example, and we shall not name names or projects or anything like that, but sometimes you have to do things because the director is just trying to tell a story. And that's really where the suspension of disbelief and suspension of reality comes in. It doesn't really matter, like in Rat Patrol, it didn't really matter that it was an American tank with a German, Iron Cross painted on it, because you're just trying to tell a story. But when you get something that's like really wacky, then it kind of stands out and you kind of lose the storyline. So it's a fine line you walk when you're making a movie. You're being creative. You are making something, and people pay a lot of money to go and see what you made, and they expect certain things out of you. So we do our best to try to be spot on with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or they give up on you if things happen. Like, there's lots of folks that want me to ask you about Walking Dead. Now, I don't know if you have any affiliations with Walking Dead.
We have rented many props on Walking Dead, and we've had some of our armors. We have guys all over the country. Some of our guys have worked on Walking Dead. I have not worked on it myself. I have prepped some guns that got shipped to our guys in Georgia, but I haven't actually worked on the show itself.
Okay. So you guys don't take any responsibility for there being machine guns fired at vehicles on Walking Dead, and there's no damage done to those vehicles.
Well, what kind of bullets were they firing, Hank? What kind of vehicle was it? You have to ask yourself these questions. You can't just kind of make a blanket, statement like that. It's very, very important.
How much does production have for real bullets? I mean, come on.
There you go. You know what? Again, I mean, if you go back, we were talking about shows from the 80s, right? So here's one I'm going to dredge up.
Okay,
how wonderful was the A-Team?
Everybody
loves. Right. Everyone loves the A-Team. No one ever died in that show.
How can you ever try to hide behind it?
Thousands of rounds were fired, and nobody ever died in that show. But it was still a good show, right?
We watched the A-Team all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was 12 or something, but
I feel so old now, Hank. Thank you.
No, okay, it's true. That's true. The A-Team was awesome.
Yeah, how long can you hide behind a sheet metal 55-gallon drum with a rifle machine gun being fired at you and not get hurt? I mean,
there you go. But again, they were telling a certain story, and sometimes, let me put it to you another way: kids nowadays and grown-ups, for that matter, are very into video games, Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, different things like that. How many games have you seen where your prize, when you kind of up a level, is now you've got the 50 caliber Desert Eagle, and somehow that 50 caliber Desert Eagle can take 1,000-yard shots? Do we really care? No, when you're playing the game, you don't care. You got the cool gun that you wanted, and you take the shot with it. So they're trying to be more realistic too, but it is entertainment. We're not, we're not changing the world here. We're entertaining people. So you always got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, it is a balance. And I guess that's where Hollywood Weapons comes in. I know that you guys did one of your shows where you tested the theory, I guess, in cowboy movies that people would hide behind the water trough.
Yep.
And
that was a good
that
one.
was somehow bulletproof. And that came out to be true, right? You hide behind the...
It did. Surprisingly enough, it was both concealment and cover. The bullets, we were shooting 45 caliber rounds, which were the typical rounds of the day. Round nose lead bullets, which is what they would have had in the day. It actually penetrated through the front of the water trough, through the water, and kind of embedded in the back part, but it protected the guy who was hiding behind the water trough. So that was one of the ones that we, scored up as a yes, that could be done kind of thing on Hollywood Weapons, which, like you said, that's where that show comes in, because it's a really good complement to both the entertainment industry, where you might go a little bit far just to tell a story, and then you compare that to the real world and you realize, well, they embellished it a bit in the movie, but it does actually work, and we're actually running a more success rate of things working than things not working. So again, the film industry is kind of based on reality. It mirrors reality, and the real world and the entertainment world kind of bounce off of each other back and forth. So it's kind of fun to see that, stuff like that happens in the movies can actually be done in real life.
Yeah. Walter, did you want to get anything in here? I see there's let me see.
I can't see the chat, so right at the moment. So
you can't see the chat? Okay, cool. Yeah. The chat is very lively.
Oh, okay.
The chat is very lively.
I'm trying to get up on my phone, but it's not. I'm not. For some reason, I'm not having to.
Yeah, someone wants to know. Let me see. Scamp 900, was Larry working on the Crow when Brandon Lee was killed? Does he have any comment on that?
Okay. To the person who asked that question, my kids constantly remind me of how old I am, but I'm not that old. Okay? The Crow was just a little bit before my time. I also, within my job at Independent Studio Services, I also teach the industry safety class as far as firearms on set. There's a whole regime of classes that employees of the entertainment industry need to take nowadays just to be able to set foot on a movie set. Safety awareness around, heavy equipment, safety awareness around electrical lines. And there's a component that is a safety component for firearms. All of those kind of things were not really around when the accident happened with the Crow.
What was the Crow? Early 90s?
Gosh, it was either early 90s or just at the end of the 80s, I would think. Like I said, a little bit before my time in the film industry. The level of professionalism on a movie set nowadays, even compared to what it was, let's say, 10 years ago, because of the demand of the newer technologies and because of the level that the audiences demand, the level of the crews has grown just in huge proportions. And so if it's a competent production that's doing things the right way, which most of them do, they'll have an on-set armorer. And in that particular case, an accident like happened with the Crow, I don't want to say is impossible to have happen today, but it's as close to impossible as you could imagine. That was a string of events that, was very odd, very different, kind of like a lightning bolt striking twice in the same spot. It can happen, but very, very rarely. So,
I think the Crow
terrible tragedy could have been averted, obviously, but that's why they call them accidents. There was no curse involved against the Lee family. There was no malice involved in any way. It was just a series of some, bad circumstances that created that situation.
Yeah, The Crow on IMDb was 1994.
There you go.
It could have been actually filmed a little before
quite a bit
that.
earlier. Yeah,
because it probably got slowed down.
93.
Yeah,
probably when it was being filmed.
Yeah,
that's another thing
Mhm.
that you got to realize about the film industry. Like for we people that work in it, you kind of live in a time capsule, a weird kind of time delay thing, because you're working on the project and it consumes your entire life while you're working on it. But then it takes a year before it hits theaters. And when that movie hits the theaters, you're already working on another show.
Yeah.
So for you, that movie is like old stuff. It's not,
Mhm.
you know, not really always the excitement of seeing it come out on the screen, because you know the story, you know what's happened, and it's a year old for you at that point.
Yeah, well, that's why you'll see a Chris Pratt, for example. He becomes a hot actor out there, and then in a year you'll see 5 movies with Chris Pratt. Well, he didn't do all those movies that year.
Correct.
Yeah, they just decided, oh, he's hot. We're putting everything, out with him no matter what.
And the entertainment industry, it's a very odd combination of being in the creative world and being in the business world, because making movies and selling tickets, it's still a business. If we don't make money on films, there won't be another film for you to go to see next year. So you have to earn that money. And sometimes the financial decisions outweigh the creative ones. Sometimes the creative ones outweigh the financial ones. So it's a very interesting realm where you need creative people, but you also need very business-minded people. And a lot of research goes into when to release certain movies. So like you said, they could have made a specific film 2 years ago and for whatever reason decided not to release it yet. And then all of a sudden 3 films come out in a row. It's people way smarter than me are the ones that figure all that out, but I think they're pretty successful at it.
Yeah. And the other thing I think about like accidents and things like that happening on a set, it happens. So this is the thing. Even right now, there's stunt guys. I think there's no job out there that people do that someone can't potentially die in that job, right? If you have a job that no one can potentially die in that job, let us know, because human beings die, but accidents happen as well.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember, like we were talking earlier about, you could walk out into the middle of the street and get hit by a bus accidentally. Things happen, life happens. As an overall, I think the film industry has one of the greatest success rates as far as a safety record of any industry out there. But things happen, people get injured. You're dealing with humans. Humans make mistakes. There's nothing you can do about that. So it's really a matter of being on your toes at all times. All the studios have excellent, safety personnel that are out on sets. If you were ever out on a movie set, you'd be surprised how much effort goes into just like one little scene. You could be filming for 3 weeks a scene that on the screen when the movie comes out is only 30 seconds. And yet 3 or 4 weeks or more of work and effort went into it because of everybody's desire to do things safely without anyone getting hurt. And again, I think that's one of the magic elements of the job that we do as on-set armorers, is you're taking firearms and there's flash and there's flame and there's hot brass coming out of them. And yet we can do things over and over and over again, no matter how many takes you need. And we can do it safely because we've learned the art of controlling those elements and being able to form them into the movies that people see in the movie theater.
Yeah. Okay. Very good answer to that. All right. So let me see. I'm going to try to get to
I'm trying to do this kind of thing for a living. So I try to come up with good answers like that, Hank. So
yeah,
maybe people will invite me onto podcasts or something.
I think you're going to be your career is going to take off.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know how that works out for me.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Walter.
Why do you get 100 rounds out of an 8-round mag? And I'll leave it at that.
That's just okay. Good question.
In those movies, right? Pow, 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 pow. You're like going,
okay,
what the hell? Come on.
So now I'm really going to date myself, but how many of you guys read Mad comic books when you were kids?
I remember.
Familiar.
You're familiar, so I'm really old. Anyway, they used to do takeoffs right on big movies and everything. And one of the ones that they did is they did a parody of Where Eagles Dare. Remember the movie where Eagles Dare? Richard Burton, Clint Eastwood, great World War II movie.
Yeah.
And there's a scene just like that, Walter. They're escaping at the end. They're out the back, leaning out the back of a bus. The whole German army is chasing them, and they're shooting these Schmeisers, and somehow they never run out of bullets. And they answered that question in the Mad comic book. And the answer was that they had ammo elves on their side. And when you're the good guys, you have the ammo elves on your side. You don't see the reloads, but they're there.
True. That's
you
probably...
learned something just now, didn't you? You didn't know that before.
Are ammo elves? Do ammo elves have to be in the union?
Yeah.
I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that I might incriminate myself.
Do ammo elves have to be registered under ATF?
Do they have a magic finger too?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
one of those points where it's, we're trying to tell a story, and whether you see a magazine change on camera or not. I mean, I think most of the viewing public nowadays understands that MP40 doesn't have an endless supply of bullets. They did the magazine change when they cut away to a different scene, is what it is. I think people, the level of education in the viewers has grown so much, even just in the 20 years that I've been doing this, that, it's kind of cool that you can work within a story and not have to worry about showing every single detail like that.
Yeah, I don't see that as much. Like you were talking about the A-Team. I don't see that as much now in things as we did back in the 80s and 90s, right? In movies, we don't really see it that much.
Yeah, that's true. You actually do see like technical magazine changes on camera and stuff like that. And again, that level of realism is being booted up by the dedication of the actors that are willing to learn different types of guns, to learn how to do these things, the dedication of the technical advisors and the on-set armorers that, have planned out prior to filming, weeks and weeks and weeks of training, to do those kind of things, so that when you do see it, like I said, the entertainment industry mirrors the real world, and you want it to mirror it as closely as you possibly can. So you will see more realism when it comes to firearms. Now you see many shows now where people are going like, "Oh darn, I'm out of rounds." It's I'm out. What do I do now? And that's usually when it devolves into a fist fight or a knife fight or something like that. But that's real world occurrences. You can't carry that much ammunition on you 24/7. So I think you're right. I think you don't see that kind of blind belief of endless bullets in the movies anymore. And again, it's because of dedicated professionals that are, practicing our craft and trying to bring that to the screen.
Yeah, and I think also they see, like, for example, we were talking about John Wick. I think they see that those movies do really well, and that means something. I mean, they may not get Oscars, I get it. But
John Wick was an example where I guess maybe they purposely went out and made sure everybody knew this guy trained his ass off. And that was all over the internet, that he was like a shooter, doing it for real. So you go, wow, that shit's real. It ain't CGI, which I'm not a huge CGI person, because after a while, you go to the theater and everything's CGI. It's like, okay.
Yeah, he did a lot of training with Tehran Tactical. And some other places, and that stuff actually went viral, I think.
Oh yeah,
it did. I mean, Tehran does very well at that kind of things. Obviously, he's a multi-time, I think, world champion in 3-gun, a very successful shooter. He's also got the ability to teach well, which, as you guys know, someone can be very brilliant in doing something, but if you don't have the ability to transfer that knowledge to someone else, you can't be a good teacher. So it is refreshing to work with professional actors. And one of the things you got to remember about actors is one of their skills is mimicry. If you show them the right thing to do, they're very talented at picking up on, body movement and different things like that very, very quickly. That's why they're good actors. And so if you have a good team in place, again, armorers, technical advisors, something as trivial as having the writer discuss something with the armorer, because the writer's trying to tell a story, but maybe they don't know very much about guns, where the safety lever is, what guns have safeties, what guns don't, what guns have a hammer on them, and what guns don't. That working together, that's why they call it a film crew. You're part of the crew. There's different departments and everything, but it's one giant crew that everybody's pulling in the same direction. And that's when you come out seeing a really, really good film.
Yeah.
You mentioned your father was an engineer. I don't know if you mentioned you said your father was an engineer.
Correct.
So if you're in the world of making things and you're working with engineers, a lot of times the engineers have these fabulous ideas, and this is going to be the best thing in the world. And you go, you can't make it.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to make this thing? How are you going to machine this part? They don't have
my dad was a mechanical packaging engineer, which basically means when you see those telemetry tables with all the screens and buttons and all that, he's the guy who designed that console and who put all the elements in behind the screen and everything. And there's different disciplines in engineering, and one of them is being a production engineer. And you're right, people come up specifically, let's say with firearms, they'll come up with a great design that they hand built one of them in a shop over, let's say, 3 years. But when the design hits the market, it's altered. And that's where a production engineer stepped in and said, we're going to make this a pin instead of a screw, and we're going to make that a flathead instead of a Phillips, and things like that, so that you can mass produce things. And like anything, television show, a movie, whatever, any product like that, it's the talent of the people that are thinking ahead. How will you use that product? So they alter it accordingly, and that's the difference between a good product and a bad product.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. The engineers cannot always be, trust. My dad was a metallurgical engineer. Okay, and he has a master's degree from Brownells, and nice. My dad is also the person who bought one of those Hyundai Excels when they first came out in the 80s because it had an aluminum engine, and therefore he believed he never had to change the oil in that thing. So he basically drove that till it seized.
I know many engineers that are actually brilliant people, and they can't tie their own shoelaces. Yeah. So thank God for Velcro, right? But yeah, I mean, there's certain things that, I think it's true of all of us, not just engineers. There's certain areas where we all just have certain blind spots, and we excel at some things and we don't excel at others, and that's what keeps the flavor of life interesting.
Sometimes I'm working on something and I'm like, it's like I just can't. I don't see it. Somebody else will walk up in the shop and go, "Hey, why don't you just do that?" It's like, "Oh yeah, okay. Why didn't I think of that?" It's like, boom, done.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Even if you make something that's not the best product in the whole world, any person at all who's got the ability to take a thought, it's an intangible thing. It's you can't even see a thought. It's just something that we create in our own minds, and actually take it from a thought process to something physical that you can put in your hands. That's amazing. And that in and of itself makes it a decent product. Some are better than others, but still, it's admirable.
Right. Yeah. Some folks can't. Like I used to do drafting, so unless you can see this thing before you start drawing it, it's hard to do. It's coming up.
I know, and that's a dangerous thing too, because if you draft too close to the car in front of you, you might bang in. Oh wait, you were talking about a different type of drafting, weren't you? Okay.
Well, it's like
was that deliberate or accidental? I don't know.
I'm sorry. What was that? There's some static here. I couldn't quite hear what you're saying, Hank.
But unless you can see it ahead of time, it's hard to design something.
It is.
Yeah,
true. It's very hard to design something, and we also, fall into a trap. Anyone who designs or builds something always has to be very leery of falling into the trap of designing something for yourself. It's like, okay, let's say I have big hands, so when I design a product that fits good in my hand, but you're not building it for yourself. You got to build it for the wide majority of people who are out there. And so it is a very difficult thing. There really is no one size fits all.
Yeah.
It's very hard to come up with a product like that.
Something really simple, like we make these stocks I was telling you about. Well, my own personal opinion, I like one position, open, close. 99.9% of everything we sell is multi-position.
There you go.
I want all positions.
Yeah, and not that these people ever use the other positions, but they just want it.
Yes, I need to know. I can
that's
have
the
all
odd thing. These people who wind up buying a multi-position item, they'll only wind up ever using one position. At least the majority of them.
Right.
And that's why, me personally, I think, fixed power scopes. I don't need all that different magnification for most things. There's certain things that, simple is better. And in the gun world, of course, any product that we use, be it a scope, a buttstock, ammunition, different magazines, it's still kind of based off of something that came out of a military environment.
Right.
And when you're on the battlefield with a piece of equipment, you know the same thing as from dealing with tanks, Walter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Simple is better.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's kind of, I always say, the Russian way of looking at things.
Yep.
Make it real simple, so Joe from the farm can figure it out and use it immediately. He doesn't have to go.
And it's robust enough that you could beat it against the side of a building.
Right.
And because there's very few moving parts in it, there's very few things that can break. Because when you're out on a battlefield and a piece of your equipment breaks, it is not a pleasant situation to be in.
I've never been in it, but yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's just it's not, and it's not just with the guns. I mean, be it the strap on your helmet or your canteen lid doesn't work right because it wasn't designed the right way.
Right.
It becomes very, very difficult to function when your equipment is not working correctly.
Let me just tell you guys something. I know you guys are engineering, build gunsy kind of guys, okay, talking all your logic and stuff like that. But from the modern gun guy, I just want to say we want to make sure we're prepared for the zombie apocalypse. So we need multiple positions.
Yeah, Hank, I'm looking up on my phone right now. I'm still stuck on engineering. I don't actually think that's a cromulent word. So,
oh boy. So
for sure, any of this kind of stuff, and I'm not talking about, people that are, negatively termed preppers or whatever. You always want to be prepared for stuff. Do you drive away from home in a car that doesn't have a jack in it? What do you do if you have a flat? You got to be able to change your own tire.
Well, a lot of cars
leave
now,
the house with no gasoline in the tank? Same thing.
Yeah, you're going to say a lot of cars now don't even have jacks or spare tires and stuff like that, right?
What just happened?
Walter, can you hear us?
Yeah. Am I still there? Okay.
Yes, you're here.
No, like, for example, the Fiat that I have, it doesn't have a spare tire. It's got a can of goo.
Yep.
And that you're supposed to squirt the goo in, and hopefully it works.
That's what they all say.
Yeah, squirt the goo in. Yeah.
That's where a lot of trouble starts from.
And it comes with an air compressor, a little air compressor, I guess. I've never taken it out. I've never had to use it, but I would much rather have a jack and a spare tire, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but at least you have the can of goo and you have the air compressor. You wouldn't leave on a long road trip without it. So
this guy right here.
Or the cell phone.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I actually did it. Just not trying to be contrarian. But,
which one? Leaving without the spare tire or leaving without the phone?
Yeah, my car came with a kit. With the air compressor and everything and a nice little bag and all that. And I was like, I'm never opening this bag. So I took it out.
It loses its value if you open the bag.
And left it. And then I had tire problems from from Texas to Las Vegas, basically. So I learned my lesson.
I mean, that's why I like my Jeep Wrangler, because, it's one of the few cars that you can buy that doesn't have a 50-mile spare tire. It comes with 5 tires, and they're all full use tires, which is, just being a Boy Scout, be prepared.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. I'm dealing with 2 Boy Scouts.
Yeah, and I got 2 Eagle Scout sons too. So.
There you go.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break here, just because I want to get into some guns and things like that. And I know there's a whole bunch of people. I want to get into the guns things. Also, I want to give away stuff. So what we're going to do is Larry is old school, so he has no social media. So,
oh, poor Larry.
Yeah,
He's too busy.
Unlike you guys, he has a Wrangler. So if he gets in trouble, he can take care of himself. He doesn't have to go on his phone and go on Facebook and tell people to rescue him.
Tweet for help.
I have a Humvee and a Pinsgauer, and everything's got a spare tire.
Yeah. But we are going to give away stuff since it's December, so I'm going to do that here in a quick second. And what we're going to do is just give it to the people who are watching the chat right now. We have over 100 people watching.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, Larry and Walter can't see the comments and things like that. I can. And I am going to get to questions and things like that people asked on other social media and all that stuff before we do it. I want to do like a quick shout out, though. There you go, 97.3, The Sky. I want to these are my local radio guys here.
Very nice.
Yeah, and I actually went to harass them today at the radio studio, and then they gave me T-shirts. So I want to shout them out. If you're in Gainesville, Bob Rose and Greg Cassidy, really good guys. They're Second Amendment guys, all that kind of stuff. Good folks. I just want to shout them out. You'll probably see me like wear that in some kind of video that we put up. And then let me get into the stuff that we're giving away here real quick. If I can just do that. So there's a Hornady. Are you familiar with
nice.
Hornady?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's a Hornady hat in here. So that's one of the things that we're giving away. Of course, Brownells sweatbands. Have you?
There you go. I thought you were out of those things.
Almost. This is the last of it because Lola is getting tired of shipping stuff. Okay. So, but I think this is probably the very last of it. We're on the end, and there's a bunch of stickers here, like Glock stickers, and let's see, what do we have? There's patches and all that kind of stuff. Franklin Armory.
Very cool.
Yeah, AAC. There's a bunch of swag in here. We got stuff from Keltec. We've got all kinds of cool goodies in here. There's a We Like Shooting patch. The We Like Shooting guys were with me when we came out to ISS, Larry.
Yep.
Shout out to those guys.
It was a wonderful group of people that came out there and all brought together by Brownells.
Yes, absolutely. Tons of patches. Walter makes these gnome patches. Check that out.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, and that's the shorty shotgun that the gnome has. That tactical gnome has. So all of that. There's just a bunch of stuff in here. So we're going to give that away to someone. And I'm just going to pick someone because I know Walter and Larry cannot see the chat. So we'll give it away to someone in there. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is make sure that you hit the thumbs ups. Make sure that you share this video as well. And then we're looking for someone that we haven't given swag to in December. If you're out there, you haven't given swag, maybe we can let you guys work it all out. Who out there should we give the swag to? Somebody help me out here and let me know who we're going to do that.
I think you should, start by giving it out to someone who asks the best questions.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So someone come up with a really good question.
I have one. I have a really good question.
What's up?
Someone asked me to ask, has CGI hurt the prop business?
Good question.
So I think, I don't want to say that it's hurt the prop business. It's changed the prop business a little bit. You definitely have less big, massive scenes of guys running around with props, be they guns or other pieces of equipment, because now you can just kind of multiply the images. So you'll have maybe motion capture of 20 or 30 guys, and then they make it look like there's actually 500 guys storming the beach. Okay. So there's been a little bit of a change, but CGI to me, again, it's not supposed to be a replacement to having a guy standing there with a prop in his hand. It's kind of an addition to. There are places where it's useful.
Enhances things.
And it enhances things, correct.
Right. Yeah. And I think movies that overuse it, we could tell the difference.
That's the difference, and like anything, whether it's, props or CGI or too much wardrobe or too much emphasis on cars, it's finding the right balance. CGI is a great tool. When I go out on set as an armorer, I don't go out with one gun. I go out with a bag full of tricks. I've got the gun. I've got a backup to the gun. I have a rubber gun. I have all kinds of different things so that when they call for a specific thing in a scene, I can pull that out. That's what you do if you're a professional and you're respecting your craft. If you get too dependent on one element or one trick, the audience is smart. They pick up on that. And so too much CGI is not good, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I know with the Star Wars movies, a lot of fans wanted to go back more like where there was actually the puppets and stuff like that, so it seemed more real instead of all the CGI.
Yeah.
And the last movies they did that, and I kind of liked that myself.
Yeah, practical effects.
Yeah,
practical effects are always better. Anytime a filmmaker, a director can film something for real, they will always opt to do that because it just looks better. But there are times, let's say Star Wars is a good example, like you brought up. I mean, if the alignment of the stars isn't quite right and the Death Star wasn't in the right quadrant to film that day, you might have to use CGI in order to get that shot. So everything in moderation.
Yeah, and the way they did it way back when with the models and all that, some of that looked kind of hokey. So and
technology grows.
It's evolved out of that. So
yeah. I think a good mix of all things, like you said, it's tools.
When the spaceship is flying this way and the fire's going up, that's not usually a good sign. There's no.
It takes a lot of effort to get that spaceship to fly in the right direction, and when the CGI flame doesn't match up with the flight of the spacecraft, it's very disappointing.
Yeah, the elves aren't doing their work.
The elves aren't doing their job.
And when you look at the credits of these movies, sometimes the people involved with all the computer aspect of it, just the list of names goes huge. It's ginormous. It's like so. That's putting a lot of people to work and keeping a lot of people buying refrigerators and cars and paying their rent and stuff. So I hate to use this word because a lot of people don't like it. It trickles down.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Who asked that question, Walter?
Your wife.
Oh, okay. All right. So she can't win anything.
She can't win anything.
So Disciple asked this question, and he supports us on Patreon. So thanks for that. I know lots of stuff going on with Patreon right now. So thanks to all the people that are still hanging in there. We're looking for alternatives. It's going to take time to come up with a better alternative to that. But anyway, so Disciple asked, he actually asked a couple of questions. So I'll take one of them. Larry, what was the most outrageous gun you've made for the movie so far?
Wow. I would have to say that back when I first started, I think it was either around 2000, maybe 2001. We worked on a movie called Showtime with Robert De Niro and Eddie Murphy.
Yes, a brilliantly horrible movie that I love.
Yeah, it's one of those cult classics now.
Yes, I love it.
It had part of the storyline, in fact, was about this underground gunsmith that was making this gun and committing crimes with it. The gun was like a little transformer gun. It had to fold up and everything. And we had to build that gun up. It was a very visually impressive gun. I think you saw it when you were at the shop, Hank. And that gun ultimately became Vera in Firefly, which was another cult classic. I also had the privilege that particular project, we still had a gentleman named Jim Boland, who's a very famous gunsmith. He's passed away now, but back then, as a young guy in the industry, I was working with him. And just a funny personal story, when I was going to gunsmithing school, when I was going to college to learn all this, I could remember going to the supermarket and getting every month I'd get, Guns and Ammo would come out. And there was an article about this one particular gun, and it was made by this gunsmith. What was his name? Jim Boland. And I could remember telling my wife when I was in school, like, wow, look what this guy did. If I, get to be half the gunsmith that he is, I will feel like I've had a successful career as a gunsmith. And so many, many years later, to actually wind up working with him was a great privilege. And it was really pretty cool. But I think that was probably the most challenging project. Visually, it was the most impressive. But you got to remember that working on any of these guns and making them fire blanks correctly on a daily basis is just a very challenging endeavor.
Yeah, that's another thing too about movie guns. I hate to see these like weak firing gas guns that go. You know, when you shoot a 50 cal, you need to go pop. You know, it needs to rock and roll, and you can
gas guns again. That's more in the special effects realm. It's not what we deal with because we deal with real guns that have been converted to shoot blanks, and that's where again a gas gun is a specific tool to be used in a specific scene. It's not a replacement for a real Mongoose.
Yeah. So lots of people are impressed by the fact that you built Vera.
I knew that would be a popular subject.
Yeah. Lots of people impressed. So Pitchlock says Larry built Vera. Brian Wyatt
me and Jim together.
Okay, very cool. Brian Wyatt says Vera is freaking rad. So there you go. Flopping Garbage wants to know if you have a rifle in the 40-watt range.
40 watt is kind of old school at this point. We're up into about the 56, 57 watt range at this point.
Oh, okay.
40 watt has been there, done that.
Yeah. So lots of kudos on that. Richard Hughes had a question here. He says, is the Mini 14 the favorite prop gun base?
Well, the Mini 14 is a very reliable gun. And back in the day, again, going back to like the A-Team television series, it's very prevalent in those old 80s cable shows because of how modular it was. There was aftermarket stocks, there were high-capacity magazines, and so it was very, very prevalent on television. It is, however, even in the real world, a very good, reliable gun. And so when we build things that we have to build shells around, we will pick a Mini 14 or an AK-47 because of how reliable they are to build into some of these sci-fi guns that you see on camera.
Okay.
And they'll run with, like the AK will run with a barrel this long if you wanted to.
Yeah, AK is very adaptable platform. It doesn't matter what you do to it.
It'll go bang.
It's very difficult to make it not go bang, and that's what we like because, when you're making a movie, this is one of the oddities of the world I live in. Having come from both law enforcement and military, I know that you're trained that if you have a malfunction in your firearm, you clear the malfunction and you keep on with the fight. On a movie set, if you have a malfunction with the firearm, the whole shot is ruined because now you've got special effects going off when the gun didn't fire, a helicopter flew overhead. It takes hours to reset that. So we almost strive for more reliability on a movie set than we do in the real world, which is kind of backwards of what you would think, but it is the truth. And so we always try to build things on very, very reliable platforms, like a Mini 14, like an AK, like any of the SIG products, a Glock, things like that.
Yeah, lots of people happy that the AK is getting mentioned. So lots of happiness.
It's an icon. It's an absolute icon.
Yeah. So Rondell Stewart asked this question also on Patreon, and it's kind of connected to that. What do you consider to be your masterpiece? Is it Vera that you consider to be the masterpiece?
Wow, that's a tough one. I would say, I would say that's in the top 3. That was quite a while ago. I think my masterpiece in general, if you want to call it that, is the fact that the crew at ISS manages to do any of this. The fact that we have the inventory, we manage to keep it running, that we are able to meet all the different challenges of the different scenes that we have to do. So taking almost any firearm and doing a very technical scene and being able to do it safely is something that I'm particularly proud of. But of the guns that you guys know, I'm very proud of Vera. I'm very proud of the crew at ISS. We came up with a very specialized firearm for the series Westworld. It was kind of a hybrid of a couple of different guns. Very proud of some of the work that we did on Oblivion, which was a kind of a make-believe gun, but it was built around a real firearm. And then, like I said, the historical scenes, anytime we manage to put the right firearms in the right historical film, I'm usually pretty proud of that. I'm a big history buff myself. So I like to see a nice finished product.
Yeah, I think the library of guns that you guys have is amazing. I don't know the numbers, but I know it's massive, like actual real guns. So I think you have airsoft rubber guns, and then you have real guns.
We do. The airsoft and the rubber usually comes out of our rental department. The firearms are kept separately, obviously in the weapons department because they're real firearms. Even though they've been converted to shoot blanks, they're still legally considered real firearms. We have a little over 16,000 firearms in stock. And our motto is from rocks to rockets. So we have a little bit of everything. So we start out with some wheel locks and some match locks, and we've got all the way up to 57-watt pulse rifles and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Everyone wants to know what kind of food Walter's getting, because obviously Walter has to get food delivered in.
For those of you that've been in New Orleans before, there's things called beignets, which are basically just doughy.
I hope you brought to share with everyone.
Doughy, powdered sugar covered things that give you indigestion. And then I like to have mine with chocolate milk. So yeah.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
These are from Morning Call in City Park in New Orleans. Yeah. So.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Everybody's going to get a chuckle as I try to eat these things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. There you go. So right now, if you're listening to this on iTunes or some other place that the audio goes, Walter's having a good old time. He's eating plenty of powdered sugar and fried dough.
Hey, 'tis the season, right?
I don't do it every day at home, So
yeah. So here's another question from Disciple before I go over to some other social media. He says, of the guns you've made for Hollywood, which one do you regret?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's a very good question. I'm going to have to think about the answer on that. Okay. In general, saying that, anything that we've ever made that worked successfully enough that it looks good on screen, kind of means that you don't have one that you dislike. There might be a level of, like something more, like something less. I think some of the films that we've done, there's been some background stuff where we've been forced, just because of numbers, to use some rifles that were maybe inappropriate for the time frame of that movie. So those are things that I kind of regret. I do feel, in the movie you brought up earlier about having a hammer on a Glock, that was one of those deals where they CGI'd it in after we filmed the practical gunfire.
Oh my God!
With the thing. But so I kind of feel a little bit bad about that. But again, that was just the editors trying to tell a story, the director trying to tell a story. So I understand why they did it.
Because I think Ant-Man wanted to get in front. I think Ant-Man stopped the hammer or something like that, and they wanted to show them.
Yeah, the ants.
Oh, the ants. So okay.
I thought that was actually a great point in the story. It's just obviously with the wrong gun. Sometimes there are things that we do that we have no control over. That's done in post-production 6, 7, 8 weeks after filming. Yeah. We're already on set working on a different movie. So that's probably one that I would say that I wish didn't turn out that way, but it's a great movie. And so I don't really think that affected things that much.
Yeah. Okay. You know that there's gun guys out there that their heads exploded. You don't like that stuff either, right? When you see it, it gets under your skin.
Of course, a Western where a guy shoots, more than 6 shots in a row without reloading, a single shot flintlock where you get 2 shots off in a row without reloading, all those kinds of things. It's like from the aspect of a professional who deals with firearms, as well as someone who's a big history buff, it's one of those things that, like I said, bursts the bubble for me. When I'm watching a movie like that, if something like that happens, I find it very hard to buy into the story afterwards.
All right, so here's the opposite end of things. A firearm or a prop gun that you spent hours and hours and spent all kinds of time making, had all these great, this is going to be awesome, and it doesn't make the doesn't make the cut. Does that ever happen?
Like, you know, not just beating me up, but like stabbing me right through the heart, right, Walter?
Well, I mean,
like you even knew that was one of the things that bothered me, right?
Or you think this is going to be awesome in the movie, and then they don't use it.
Yeah.
Or they.
So here's a wonderful story that goes along those lines. Our industry has become a global industry, so we do wind up traveling quite a bit. And I personally don't necessarily enjoy travel that much for work purposes, but hey, it's one of the things that you have to do. And I was working on a film where we had to mount a minigun on a rubber boat. And it was kind of a last minute deal. And they said, well, you know, you'll fly out to Hawaii one day, we'll film the scene the next day with the actress, and then the third day you'll fly back. So it's, you know, really short thing. We need you to come out and do that. I wound up out there for about 4.5 weeks.
Wow.
Stuck out there, right?
Yeah.
Literally went ready for 3 days, wound up there for multiple weeks.
Yeah. And people probably think that's fun, but that's really lonely, right? If you're not.
Especially when you're working too. I mean, it sounds like great. Oh, you were in Hawaii for 4 weeks. Well, working in Hawaii is different than enjoying the beach at Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And when my kids were much younger, of course, when the movie came out that Dad worked on, they'd want to go see the movie. And so we went and saw this particular movie, and I swear there was probably less than 2 seconds of that scene made it into the final cut of the movie. Oh. And of course, I knew the storyline, so it wasn't terribly exciting for me. So I'm just sitting there in the dark, and you ever get that weird feeling when you feel like someone's looking at you? And so I kind of turn around, and here on my right are my wife and my 2 kids, and all 3 of them are staring at me, and they're going, really? 4.5 weeks in Hawaii for that? Right? And so, yeah, it gets disappointing sometimes because you really want your work to shine. We're all creative, professional people in the industry, and you want your work to shine. But by the same token, that 3 seconds added its part to the story. It didn't need more than 3 seconds. The editor figured it out. They did what they needed to do. Thank goodness the paycheck didn't bounce. Everybody walks away happy, right? So it is kind of, you know, you take a lot of pride, at least I take a lot of pride in the work that I do, and you want that work to shine. But you got to understand that we're just one tiny little element in this giant film. So as long as your part worked, you did your job correctly. You should be proud of it.
Yeah. I mean, although we're gun guys, and in some movies, I think the guns might be the stars, but in most movies, the guns aren't the stars.
In all movies that have guns, guns are the stars. I want you to write that down right now and remember that in future. In fact, you can email the studios and tell them that too.
Yeah, shame for shame.
If you ever want to go back to ISS, you better say, oh,
there you go. Yeah, you know, I honestly, I think, again, every movie that has a gun in it, the gun is just one element of telling that story. It's no more important or less important than the pocket watch or the cigarette holder or the cell phone or the holster, or, you know, the point of dialogue where the writer wrote in the right type of ammunition that they were using, whatever it may be. And so I don't know that one's more important than the other. I think it's more important that they all gel together correctly.
Okay, very good. Let me go to Facebook. Let me see. Okay, so this question was from Matt Morse. There's a whole bunch of questions. What was your first gun? Did you grow up in a pro gun house? What's your favorite movie gun? What's your favorite real gun? So I think you kind of answered some of these, but
yeah, my father was predominantly a small bore target shooter in competition. So my first gun that I ever fired that he owned was a Ruger Mark II and a Winchester Model 52 competition rifle. Those were my father's guns, and so I shot them. My favorite gun to shoot, I have to say, is going out onto the range. Like I said, I grew up in Israel. So being, like a 7-8-year-old and being able to shoot an Uzi or an AK, not many 7 or 8-year-olds get a chance to do that. So I think that's pretty cool. And as far as a movie gun. It's not something that I put in a movie because it was a little bit before my time. But I think the image of Clint Eastwood with his 44 Magnum Model 29 is so iconic that it's kind of, gone beyond being a gun anymore. It's even people who are non-firearms enthusiasts know what that gun is, recognize it.
Yeah, the Dirty Harry gun.
It. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. There was a question there. I'm gonna show some guns that I have here.
Okay.
There was a question I saw, actually a couple people asking, what about the Beretta 92s? Why do we see those in movies so often?
Well, I think
even in the show, you guys use it several times in the show.
Yeah, too. I think there's a couple things to remember. Number one, if you're dealing with anything U.S. military or law enforcement from the late 80s into almost the 2000s, a lot of law enforcement was using the Beretta 92. It was a very reliable, very common gun. And in the entertainment industry, we mirror reality. So if you see it a lot in the real world, if it's a good seller, if it's always on the cover of Guns and Ammo, then you're going to see it in the movies. Because we're trying to mimic reality. When people see, a specific police department and they're carrying a Beretta 92, and the people viewing the movie know that, hey, yeah, that police department in real life carries a Beretta 92. Again, it's an element that helps you buy into that story. As far as what we use, like on Hollywood Weapons, again, I pick it because of reliability, ease of use. In this particular case, as you well know, Terry has some U.S. military background, and the main handgun that he carried when he was serving was the M9 Beretta, the military version of the Beretta 92. And so when I deal with it as the on-set armorer, because remember, on Hollywood Weapons, I'm not just the on-screen personality. I'm also the safety officer behind the camera and the on-set armorer behind the camera. I want to put a gun into his hand that he's comfortable with so that it comes across on camera that he's comfortable and fluid and everything with that handgun. What else would I choose other than a Beretta for him? Not to say that he couldn't handle other firearms. He does other ones very well and very proficiently. But given a choice, you always want to go to that comfort zone.
Okay.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Walter.
As in all movies nowadays, there is paid product placement.
Yes.
Is there paid product gun placement? So do you end up placing guns in movies that you don't particularly care for? But some manufacturer said, "I'm going to pay for that," and you're going to put it.
How much money do you have, Walter?
Well, no, I'm not asking to my
rating. No, I'm just messing with you. Good question.
Due to some licensing issues, because again, the guns are still real guns. They're not demilled in any way. When you see gunfire, it's a real gun shooting blanks. We usually don't do product placement as far as guns go. It does happen in the industry. We have not necessarily done that. We try to put the right gun into the right person's hand, but there have been some instances of product placement with some firearms. It's not as prevalent though as you might think, not like it is with, let's say, soft drinks or cell phones or automobiles or things like that. And by the way, even all those promo things, when that happens, it doesn't come to us. We're just a prop house. We provide, usually when you have something like an automobile that's being promoted in a show, that's being done directly between the manufacturer and the production.
Yeah. So that's a deal that's outside of your hands when that kind of stuff
We do have
happens.
a promo department at ISS. It's a very, very good one, but they deal with other type of hand props, backpacks and cell phones and sunglasses and wristwatches and things like that. The firearms issue, because it is a real gun, still it gets handled just a little bit differently.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Jafari H wants to know, Larry, were you ever able to get hold of some photon torpedoes? So there you go.
They're very hard to come by, so I use them very sparingly. And
I call dibs.
The minimum order is 50 at a time, so you also have to have a lot of room to store them. I could tell you my source, but It's really not legal to smuggle these things back and forth across the neutral zone. So I'd rather not name any names right now.
Yeah.
Man, you did that well.
Yeah. Well, he's a Trekkie. He's a Trekkie for sure.
Professional.
For sure.
Yeah.
Who
if you watched, yeah, absolutely. Armament and Axes gave us $2. He said, "Are you working on Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime?"
We provide a lot of different props for that. Again, one of the odd things about our industry is sometimes we work on projects that we don't know the title, because when the production company is dealing with us, they use like a code name for the production. And so sometimes we watch shows and later on we'll see it again, like 6 months to a year down the road. It'll pop up and I'll be going like, wow, this is a good show. I wonder who did all the guns on that. It's like, wait a second. That is our guns. We did provide that, you know, and it's just one of those things because of a title or how things get released. We don't always know, but we have provided some stuff for Jack Ryan.
Okay, very cool. Right. So we'll probably ask some questions as we, you know, as we look at some guns, just so we can get now. Larry, does this look familiar to you?
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, you're an IDF guy. This is modified.
Your time in the IDF, though, you were a Galil person?
Actually, my time in the IDF, I had what was called a Glilon, which was a shorter version. Here in the United States, they call it the SAR. It was a shorter barreled, given to special forces at the time. This was in the age before the micro Galil came out. So it's kind of a in-between size between the full-size Galil and what they call here the micro Galil. Right. Excellent weapon. Most everything that comes out of IMI and IWI now is very, very reliable because it has to be.
Yeah. So this is a Tavor.
Circumstances.
This is a Tavor for anyone who doesn't know.
It is a Tavor, yeah.
Yeah, it's been modified and stuff like that. I know this is going to sound cruel, Larry. I was going to say, you know, in your time when you were in the IDF, was it just rocks? Was it just like rocks in a slingshot? But
you have been talking to my kids, haven't you?
He gives me a hard time too. So.
I'm not that young. I just like making fun of
it's a little bit older.
Right?
Yeah. So anyway, so what do you think about the Tavor? Are you into bullpups at all?
I am. I think that bullpups are a very unique design concept. They always have been. They've actually been around a lot longer than people think. There were some early bullpup bolt action rifles in the early 1900s. It gives you, again, full barrel length ballistics out of a much shorter package. That is definitely the advantage to the bullpup. It does have some disadvantages, especially if you're left-handed. But I think it's a very compact gun. The Tavor itself has gone through several field tests, let's put it that way. And its current rendition, it's a very successful design, and that's witnessed by the fact that IWI is marketing that all around the world, both to law enforcement and other militaries. Very, very unique design. I tend to like it. I actually like the original Tavor over the X95, to believe it or not.
So that's what I'm showing up right now, the X95 with a suppressor and stuff like that on it. So you prefer the Tavor?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, I think it's a huge advantage on the X95 that the charging handle position is where it is on the left side of the receiver there.
Right.
I do think that for training purposes in today's market, having the M16 style magazine release is also a big advantage. But I don't know, there's something about the feel of the stock and the weight distribution on the original Tavor that just, I don't know, it just works better for me.
Yeah, I think that's true. Obviously, I think this probably works better for the guys who didn't want to get a Tavor because of where all the controls and stuff like that.
Yeah, you know Zalman Shebs, who's the gentleman who designed or was the lead engineer on designing the Tavor. I had the privilege of meeting him several years back when I got invited to IWI as a guest, and he said something that has always stuck with me. Every gun design out there, like we were talking about earlier, it's actually a compromise. even the designer, no matter how successful the gun might be, there's probably things that they wish they had done differently. But because of a marketing process, or because of a design restriction, or because of, you know, material restrictions or whatever, they had to package a compromise. And I think that the Tavor and the X95 are probably some of the best compromises that are out there right now in the bullpup market.
Okay, very cool. And then here's the last one I'll show you. Boom. So there we go. There's an AUG. What do you think about the AUG?
So I've been you know, mystified by the AUG, but you know, from the very first time I touched one, which interestingly enough was in about 1978 or 79. The Austrians had part of the United Nations peacekeeping force that was on the Israeli-Syrian border, as well as the Australians that were there as part of the peacekeeping force. They were issued, you know, AUGs, and I had only ever seen one in a Guns and Ammo magazine or in a Jane's International Defense Review. So being able to get close to one was kind of a unique experience for me. And I think that when we think of the first generation of the most common bullpups out there, we think of the FAMAS, the Steyr AUG, and the SA-80 from the UK. The reason those three stick in our minds is because they were the three most successful.
No,
I think so. I mean, well, you know, but even with its improvements, it's the same basic gun is still around.
Yeah.
And there's other manufacturers that tried to bring out bullpups, and they just fell by the wayside. So I think the AUG has a lot of things going for it. I like the fact that it can be converted into a family of weapons. Barrel changes are very easy. There was even at one point a belt-fed version of it. So I think it's one of the better ones. They were pioneers of having like a optic attached to a gun and everything. So good guns.
Yeah, and I think I was looking at Die Hard because that's a Christmas movie to me. And the guy does a quick change in there, and Lola was like, what's he doing with the barrel? I don't know if you remember that in the Die Hard movie.
Yeah, you know, Die Hard was one of the first movies that introduced the Steyr AUG as well as the Glock 17 to the U.S. market. They sold the Glock 17 more so in Die Hard 2, but some of the weaponry in Die Hard 1 was very, very unique, and the AUG being one of them.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna pull out. This is my for show and tell. This is the thing I've been waiting on here. So, you know, you're talking about the Glock.
Yep.
I do have a Glock in this bag, believe it or not.
There you go.
So, have you heard of the folding Glock?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So from full conceal, there is a folding Glock in this bag. There it goes. I haven't seen this in movies yet, Larry.
Let the hate begin.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of hate right now. There's going to be a lot of hate. This is a Glock 19, not a 17. Glock 33 round magazine that was in that bag. What do you think about these?
Yeah, we have some of those in stock right now, and I think come 2019 you'll be seeing more of those, both in television and in film. I think they're a very unique idea. Again, to me, a firearm is just a tool, and you always need to use the right tool for the right job. So that's obviously not a officer's duty carry gun. But there are some applications for some, you know, very deep concealment, very James Bondy, obviously.
Yes.
So I think it's one of those products where we still need to see the developing role that it will play in the marketplace.
Yeah. So
Definitely,
I should just go.
Definitely cool.
Yeah, I should just make a movie right now, so I could be the first person to put it in a movie.
Well, see, you know, and Walter, I think he missed the point there about.
Yeah, I think he's a little slow sometimes.
The time capsule, and that we may have already filmed things that you haven't seen yet.
Let me tell you, how long has that been out for? A year now?
Yeah. Actually,
you missed it, Hank. You missed it.
Yeah, Larry probably saw those before any of us ever saw them. Yeah, but I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist it. I had to put.
It's definitely a cool product.
Yeah. So here, I've got some questions here. I'm kind of putting a bunch of different things together. And by the way, the folks out there, and probably Lola, if she can hear me, if she's not too busy, you got to help us figure out who we're giving the swag pack to. But I'm going to take some questions and put them together. Some people want to know if you ever came across problems with actors who are anti-gun, and if you had actors that were difficult to train with guns or easy. I know we don't want to. Yeah, I know this is probably one of those things where we're on the line. I don't want to get you in trouble with anyone out there.
Yes, no, maybe.
You know, I think I had mentioned it before that good actors, one of their primary skills is mimicry. If you have a good technical advisor or a good armorer who can show them the right way to handle the firearms, it comes across because they're good actors and they mimic it correctly. I don't think I've ever had to deal with anyone that's anti-gun. Definitely there's people who are more proficient at handling guns in Hollywood than others, but that's just because of the different types of roles that they've been dealt throughout their careers. Usually it's kind of like I've been portraying it. Most actors realize that a gun is a prop. It's a prop that they need in their movie, just like they need other props in their movie. Nobody wants to be seen as kind of being a Barney Fife kind of fumbling guy there. I just used a reference that nobody knows, right? Barney Fife.
I've heard of Barney Fife. That's something.
Shut up, Hank. But so I think professional actors, people, you got to remember, everybody does their own job because it's fun, but it's a profession. People who are professional actors want to practice their craft professionally. So even if they haven't done a lot of action movies before, if now they're dealt this role of, now I'm a super action star and I'm going to use guns, they actually want to do it well. They want to look good on camera doing it. They want to, practice safety and stuff like that. And that is where the on-set armorer comes into it. So I think, at least, I don't remember the exact statistic, but it's somewhere between 75 to 80% of all production has at least one gun in it nowadays. Okay. So I think professional actors have come to recognize that it's just a common tool. It's another prop that they have to deal with. Back in the days of, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. and John Wayne and Robert Mitchum, if you were a movie star, you needed to know how to sing and dance and fence. You needed to know how to sword play and things like that. And so maybe we've moved a little bit away from that, but now firearms and computers and cell phones and laptops, those are the new skills that you need as a film star, and you need to look natural using them.
Okay. So, and then probably the political side of it that some of these questions are geared towards probably comes afterwards. They don't want to get into that on the movie set and mess with the paycheck.
Let's get to the bottom line. They want the paycheck.
Well, again,
if they don't act, they don't get the paycheck. So, I mean,
Yeah, and I think people who maybe, get involved in a movie once and have to deal with a bunch of it, if they decide that they don't like that element of their job, they'll pick other projects next time and not ones that are geared to that. There are some very, very talented actors in Hollywood that mainly, we call them action stars. And you can't think of an action movie without a lot of gunplay in it. And some of them are highly proficient, not just because they train on their own, but because of how many different movies they've done with firearms and everything. And it's always a pleasure to work with people like that, because you're working kind of on an even level. When you tell them to do something, they know what you're talking about. But it's also fun to meet new people who haven't done it before. And, teaching is a very rewarding endeavor. It's nice to be able to see people's eyes light up, be they children or adults, that when you're trying to teach them something and they finally get it, it finally clicks, you feel like you've achieved something. And so we have all kinds in Hollywood, just like you have them in any other industry.
Yeah. And here's what I would say. If you guys want to see some people that are really this stuff, you should look at Hollywood Weapons. I know you guys had Tom Selleck.
Yep. Gary Sinise was on.
Gary Sinise is on there. We all know, where these guys come down on things. Who else did you have? I think you had some other guys from TV shows and stuff like that.
We
right?
had a bunch of Nick Searcy was on. We had I think we had someone from the original Predator movie on at one point, and it is nice to see these people that portrayed a specific thing in a television show or a movie with a gun, and they wound up coming out onto set. We've kind of incorporated that into the show as a regular element because they wanted to know if it was doable or not. The stunt that they did in the movie or in the television show with a blank fire gun, they actually wanted to come out and be involved in the show because they wanted to learn for themselves whether it was realistic. And that was kind of really one of my high spots on Hollywood Weapons, that we found out that Tom Selleck actually watched the show before we even asked him to be on the show.
Oh, wow.
It's like, wow,
okay.
Someone like that is actually watching the show. That's pretty cool,
Yeah, he's a for real gun guy.
Oh, he's a magnificent guy. So is Gary Sinise. By and large, most of the people in the industry are really wonderful people. Tom specifically is very knowledgeable about guns. He's kind of a gun guy himself. He
has some very cool guns.
Absolutely. And he's just a genuine nice guy, as is his wife and his whole support crew and everything. We felt very privileged to be with him on the show. And then the Gary Sinise Foundation opened up the museum, the Gary Sinise Foundation Museum, to us and allowed us to film there. Gary does some fantastic things for the troops. And again, he's just a downright, just normal, nice guy. And it's nice to work with people like that.
Yeah. Not just because you're here, but I think folks should really try to look at this show and check it out. Terry Shapert, that's your co-host. We haven't spoken about him because you told me you don't want to talk about him at all because you don't really like him. No, I'm just kidding.
One of the cool things, first of all, the show, it is enjoyable to make this show, Hollywood Weapons. But for me, it's actually very stressful because, again, I'm not just one of the on-camera guys. Terry's the host, I'm the co-host, but I also, help the writer put the technical elements in. I help build the things out on set. I'm the safety officer on set.
Yeah,
so
you're responsible.
I'm responsible for all of that. And because we deal with live gunfire or live explosions and things like that on Hollywood Weapons, as opposed to blanks when we're doing it in a movie, my stress level is a little bit higher on that show. At the same time, because the production people, the crew, everyone from the network down to the lowliest, person on the crew, every one of them is so top notch. It's actually an enjoyable show to work on. And I think for both me and Terry, that comes across. That's one of the things that people most comment about, is this kind of easy banter that goes back and forth between me and Terry. And for me, working with Terry, it's like, hey, the guy's a former special forces guy. He's handled weapons before. He understands that I'm controlling the kind of the safety weapons aspect when we're on set, but by the same token, I know he understands what I'm telling him. If I say, don't do X, Y, Z, he doesn't question it. He understands there's a good reason. And so he just, takes his marching orders as it is. And between the two of us, everything we contribute to the show, I think, is what really makes the magic there. And that's really something that just came about. You can either say that it came about by coincidence, or you can say that it came about because the universe knew that it was the right thing. But this chemistry between myself and Terry, and now, of course, we have a little sidekick, Pompeo.
Yeah, Pompeo's funny, man. He's real funny.
He's a funny guy. Also, just
he's a great actor.
Guy. As is Andre. When we bring in our special effects crew, all those guys, it's one of those things that just, because the show is so, gosh, it's going to sound like a cliche, but it is called Hollywood Weapons, but the show is so not Hollywood. It's very little of it is scripted, and you can kind of tell in the dialogue that goes back between myself and Terry and Pompeo when he's there. It just came about as one of those very natural things. I'm not going to make this a shameless plug for the show, but if you're not watching the show, I think you're missing out on something, because the highest point for me of Hollywood Weapons was me and Terry were at an Outdoor Channel event a couple months back in Texas, and I was just amazed at how many parents were coming in with their children. And they would tell us that the kids watch the show with them. And it's not like, oh yeah, dad's making me watch the show. It's like, no, here's an 11-year-old kid that knows every episode that we did. And it's because of the blend of both the firearms and the movie aspect and everything. And you look at that and you go like, wow, here's this guy who's coming in with his 76-year-old grandmother, and she enjoys the show. She's not a gun person. But because of all the elements that were brought in, it's entertaining. And to be able to say that we were involved in a show like that, wow, that's a good feeling, I got to tell you. It means we're doing something right.
Yeah, I think you guys are doing a great job. I think, you know, there's obviously chemistry and stuff like that there, but I think you guys, I find you guys to be genuine, very intelligent, despite how you guys look. You know?
Wow.
I had to sneak that one in. Sorry.
Why you got to bring my face into it?
I didn't bring it up. That's
No, but you would think, you know, that you're dealing like with Terry, for example. I mean, you know, obviously he's a special ops guy. So were you, right? You did some special ops stuff, but he's very intelligent. He's a very intelligent guy. And I like how you guys play off of each other. You know, he didn't plant this question, but does stress have anything to do with Ricochet? I got to ask about Ricochet before we get out of here.
Well, me and Rick go back a long ways, and we've had kind of, you know, that love-hate relationship. But yes, Rick O'Shea is always the gremlin, you know, in the episode. And
why do you say Rick O'Shea? That's the question. Like from the first time I watched the show and I heard you say Rick O'Shea, I'm like, what is going on?
I honestly, people always laughed at it, and I guess they feel that I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. But you know, there was a cartoon character that was called Rick O'Shea. And it used to be in the comic strips and everything. It's like, I guess I just grew up thinking that was the correct way of saying it. And it is, because everybody else is wrong. So they can laugh at me if they want to. But, you know, I'm there as the safety officer. I have to protect Terry and the crew from Rick O'Shea's. So there.
Evil Rick O'Shea's. Yeah, I thought maybe, you know what? I thought maybe this has something to do with growing up in Israel. I don't know. Is this how the Israeli people say Ricochet? But
you know what? It is a kind of a weird thing. I find myself kind of getting caught sometimes. My wife usually is the one that brings it up to me, but having grown up in a foreign country from a very young age, a lot of times I think in the foreign language, because to me it's not foreign. That's what I grew up with. And so every now and then I'll say something, a certain phrase or whatever, and in my mind it sounds right because I'm thinking in a different language, and when it comes out of my mouth, it just comes out just like it loses something in translation. It just changes a little bit. You know, but yeah, I mean, that might have something to do with it, but I always bring up, you know, a couple things when you're thinking about it. You know, people have been writing Hebrew for like the last 3,000 years, and it goes from, I don't know if you know this, but it goes from right to left. It doesn't write from left to right. And they'll see me like writing something in Hebrew, because I'll still make notes for myself in Hebrew, and they'll go, oh, you're writing backwards. Well, no. It was correctly written from right to left. English is backwards.
Okay, right? Now hang on a second. Somebody's corrected. What? Someone's correcting you in the way that the person correcting you, can they read Hebrew?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Usually it's people who can't. And that's the other thing that I tell them, when they can read, write, and speak Hebrew as well as I read, write, and speak English, you know, then they can laugh. They laugh at me all the time at work because my handwriting is so horrible. Well, I learned English as a second language. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't my mother tongue. So what do you want? Get off my back, you know?
Walter and I could have used you. I know we did a video about, like Walter has a bunch of machine guns, being a manufacturer. And obviously a collector and stuff like that. And we were doing the Uzi video, right, Walter?
Yeah,
where we're trying to. I think you had a Uzi that had that it was
all Hebrew on it. Yeah,
it had Hebrew on there. We couldn't figure out what it was. So You know,
yeah, those are the rare ones. Most of the ones imported into the United States, you know, they have like English markings or Latin markings for the safe, the fire,
Right.
you know, the fully automatic. The rare ones are where you find, you know, the Hebrew writing on the receivers themselves, or even on the magazines. Some of the older ones will still be literally military surplus magazines,
Right.
and you'll see the writing in Hebrew that says like, you know, 25 round magazine and things like that.
Yeah. So okay, we're gonna start wrapping it up because we've done I think we've done like 2 hours already.
Yep.
But
Oh, there you go.
yeah, it just went by, man. It was so much fun.
Time flies.
Yeah, you know. So a quick thing I want to ask you, because we do every now and then we do a show on movies here where we look at a gun movie and then we kind of like, you know, talk about the different guns in there and
talk about the 100-round magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah, talk about that stuff. So lots of folks, people in the chat wanted us to ask you, what movie do you think we should do for our next one?
Well, of course, I don't know what movies you've already done.
I think we did Big Trouble in Little China.
Okay.
And we did the movie Heat so far.
Okay.
So I think those are two I can remember. I think that might be all that we've done.
Yeah, that's all we've done.
So, yeah.
Well, two of my favorite movies, which I would always recommend to a movie audience as well as a firearms audience. My number one favorite movie of all time, of course, is Lawrence of Arabia. Just a fantastic movie. And you've got Germans and you've got British and you've got Turkish troops and you've got just a variety of different things. Rolls-Royce armored cars that show up in it. All those things that are correct to the period. And so Omar Sharif shooting, you know, a #1 Mark III. How much better can you get than that? I would look at that movie. It's a long one, but it's got some very interesting firearms related things in it. And then
Lawrence of Arabia, we'll try to dig that up from 5,000 years ago.
And then the other, what I think, in my opinion at least, is probably the best war movie ever made, is A Bridge Too Far, which was about the airborne operation in Arnhem in 1944. There are a few, you know, mistakes, like some of the German troops have the wrong rank patch on their uniform or whatever. But when it comes to the firearms and everything, it's a very well done movie. And you should look at those two movies, definitely. There's lots of other ones out there, but those are two of my favorites.
Okay, very good. What do you think about that, Walter? You feel justified now?
Those are good. Okay. And also, I'd like to bring up, just real quick, we'll leave it. Back in the old days, the movie companies, the studios owned all the firearms.
Correct. You know, there used to be what was called the studio system. And not only did they own firearms, but they owned their own props. They owned basically their own actors. You signed the contract and you were either with RKO or you were with Fox. You didn't get to just make a movie for any production company that came along. The studio system is no longer really in effect, and that's how civilian or non-studio prop houses like Independent Studio Services were able to come about and survive in the marketplace.
And was it like the late 70s when the studios sold off all their guns?
Pretty much. That's kind of when the studio system started ending, if you want to put it that way. And it wasn't just the firearms. There was a lot of other equipment as well. Now there's whole lighting companies where you can go and just rent lighting packages. All that stuff used to be, you know, camera packages. It used to all be owned and on the lots. That's no longer the case.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so Lola, you got to let me know who wins the prize, because I have no idea who wins the prize. So you guys have to let me know that. Walter, I don't know if there was any last minute questions or anything like that you wanted to have. I see lots of people saying like great movie picks, Larry.
Good.
So now I will be forced to watch a movie from 1920 something, and I will have to talk about it. But I guess I'll get an education.
Yeah. There'll be no, there'll be no CPI either, by the way.
No, listen.
I think I'd much rather talk to Lola.
No, look, I'll watch them. I've seen Lawrence of Arabia, I think, a long time ago.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing to remember, and I know that both of those movies are not very modern, but they're kind of in the, if we talk of current day as the end of our movie inventory span, and you talk about like Buster Keaton in the silent era as the beginning, those two movies that I picked out are kind of like in the plumb middle, in the golden age of it. And I think the reason they're so good is because we're emulating all those movies from the golden age.
Yes.
We're coming up with new stuff now, and it's great, all the technology that we're using. But the people that made those movies, they did it for real. They didn't have CGI. They didn't have some of the technology that we have nowadays. And so what you see on screen is they actually did it all. And I think that comes across, like Walter was saying earlier, you can't have too much CGI in a movie because it starts looking that way. It just looks too fake. You need the right balance. And people like the directors of, Lawrence of Arabia, the technical advisors, I mean, on The Bridge Too Far, they had people who were actually at the historical event. They were in the battle, right. Being technical advisors for the film. And so that realism just comes across, at least for me it does. Watch the films and let me know if you think so too, Hank.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I remember from like 40 years ago when I was 6 years old, Lawrence of Arabia was a pretty beautiful movie.
You're just not going to let go of that, are you?
Just in these movies, just the number of extras and all that stuff. You don't see.
Why don't you say something? Lawrence of Arabia, his story happened in World War I, so it was in the early 1900s. Why don't you go say something like, my name is Lawrence, so was he named after me? Is that how old I am? You said you were going to be at SHOT Show, right? So I'm going to meet you face to face in the near future.
I'm going to get it. I know. I'm just kidding. We love you, Larry. We love you. I love you personally.
I even know you're one who usually gets all this crap. So I'm glad to see you.
So you're just happy that I'm on the show.
Yeah. Because I'm a couple days older than you. So
there you go.
We will watch the movies and we will dedicate them to you, Larry.
Oh, there you go.
We will dedicate them to you. So Lola tells me that Knife is the winner. He's the winner of the prize package.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations to Knife. I want to thank everyone that asked questions and all that. I know we didn't get to everyone's stuff. Larry, you're like an awesome guest, man. I really enjoyed you. I hope you enjoyed being here.
Thank you for that. And thank you so much for asking me on the show. You guys have been fantastic. I was very happy to meet you when you guys came through with the Brownells tour. One of the things that you said to me at the time that kind of stuck in my heart, to be honest, was when you and I were just talking on the side, you said you were really happy to meet us because we were real, genuine people doing the real work and just doing it for real and in a professional way. And that really meant something to me. And I want to return the compliment to you as well. Been a great.
Thank you. I must have been drunk or something.
Yeah, either that or you thought you were talking to somebody else. I don't know.
Someone wrote that on a piece of paper and said, "Make sure you say this."
No, but thank you, Thank you, Walter. It was nice meeting you. Thank you for having me on the show, Hank, and thanks to Lola for all the behind-the-scenes assistance and everything. And I look forward to seeing all you guys at SHOT Show.
Yeah, I'd like to meet you. Yep.
Yeah, it really. So here's the thing. I really am a lover of movies. I've always wanted to make movies, and that's why I do YouTube, right? Because that's where I can get in there and control it. And we look at a lot of stuff that we do is making movies, except in live action using real guns, a lot like what you and Terry do. And so to me, it was an honor. I'm really happy that you came on. I think you've been like the greatest guest we've had on so far.
Oh, wow.
Up to the
wow. Wow, that was Lola,
now you're making me blush.
Lola, did you write that?
Yeah. Hopefully we'll get you to come back on. Is there anything before we end the show? What do you want to promote? When does the new season start?
Well, season 3 of Hollywood Weapons starts on Saturday, January 5th. You're going to love it. It's if you've been following the show, every episode we've kind of raised the bar higher and higher. Season 2 was way better than season 1. Season 3 is just amazing, what the crews managed to do. Dan Ram, the writer, as well as Tim and everybody at Wintercom who originated the show, and our director, John Carter, they've done an amazing job, so I know you're going to like it. Definitely watch that. I also, as a general note, would say that I encourage people, whether you're watching television or you're in the movie theater, stay till the end of the credit roll. Don't just stay because it's a Marvel movie and they might have some after credit scene. Stay because you're actually paying attention to the names that go by on the credit roll. Walter mentioned that earlier about, it's just amazing how many people put an effort in to make those 2 hours of entertainment. And they spend weeks and weeks, if not months and months, away from their families. Sometimes it's extremely long hours in some very, very inhospitable locations. So making the movie isn't always as fun as watching the movie, but you should watch and read those names and appreciate the work that those people do. And then you'll start actually recognizing some of the names on different projects, and you'll realize that the level, hey, I like A-level movies, and guess what? I always see that one name keep popping up in all these different
Larry Zanoff.
movies. Yeah, I didn't say that. I mentioned everybody else, but I can't say, I can't be responsible if you bought that up, Hank. It's true, but no, it's like I said, a film crew is called a crew because it is a collaborative effort of everyone, be it the transpo drivers or the craft service people. Mainly, in my opinion, it's mainly due to the people that you never hear about that put in just a huge effort, and those are the people you should sit and watch those names as the credit roll goes by.
Absolutely. Walter, well said. And before I end, Walter, what do you want to say to the folks out there? Because we won't see them until the new year. So do you have any messages?
We'll be back in the shop on this coming Monday. So.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right. So there you go. So on behalf of myself, Walter, Larry, Lola, all the folks out there, we want to wish you guys like a very merry, happy new year to everyone out there. I hope 2019 is everything that you want it to be.
Be safe. Be safe.
Amen. Yeah. Be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Be safe out there. Try to enjoy your families. Remember, that's really what's important, like family, love of each other. That's really the most important thing. I look forward to seeing all you guys in the new year, seeing everyone at SHOT Show. It's going to be a great time. Anything else anyone wants to say before I get out?
Just Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Okay, we're out of here. Stay right there. Yeah, jazz hands, right. Stay right there, Larry. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to end it now. Happy New Year, guys. We're out of here. We'll see you.